Okay, okay. Okay, we're good. Go ahead, Cal.
Welcome back, everybody. Happy spring. Kristen and I are excited today to be joined by Joshua Marshall. Josh, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Absolutely. Thank you, Kristen and Kelly. Like you said, my name is Josh Marshall. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Texas, and I'm currently working as the Director of Business Development for Mind Body Optimization. So we are a mental health practice. We have two locations in the Dallas Fort Worth area, and we're providing therapy and psychiatry on an outpatient level for ages 10 and up. So it's pretty cool. It's exciting what we're doing as we're a startup, and I'm excited to be here with you two. So thank you for having me.
How did you get connected to Mind Body? Because I know that it's like fairly new and like what was attractive for you in regards to joining that startup?
I think maybe it's just the child in me. Building things is fun, and so I've had the luxury of spending about the last 10 years in a variety of mental health care settings, from private practice to psychiatric hospitals, helping open up a couple of hospitals and PHP and IOP clinics as well. And so when this opportunity came, kind of presented itself to me, it's another challenge. Like I said, it's fun working in established care, and I think it's a lot of fun building care so that it can become established, and that's what we're getting to do right now.
That's awesome. I'm also curious, like, what drew you to pursue, the helping profession and what brought you to ultimately getting your license to become a licensed marriage and family therapist?
Yeah, I love that question. I feel like it's the question, right? Especially if you work in mental health care, it's always interesting to ask other professionals why they got in the field, because the stories are usually very meaningful. I feel like we all have a very personal tie to this. I don't think the the average person wakes up and says, "Hey, I want to carry the weight of the world." I want people to come see me on their worst day every day for my career. And so I love that question. I actually, to go ahead and just jump on in, I lost my father when I was 9 years old. He and I were in a car accident, and so I was exposed, unfortunately, to um, a large scale trauma that took me far longer than I ever thought that it would take me to work through. And I say work through because you never get over it, right? But you learn how to um, kind of live in a new with a new norm. And so from a young age, I would say I grew up in a small town, so everybody knew what I'd been through, and just with that, people, my peers, I think naturally gravitated towards, hey, that dude knows what it's like to be hurting and to be in pain. And so when I'm feeling hurt or I'm feeling pain, maybe there's someone who I can at least share that with. And I felt like people naturally gravitated towards sharing life's difficulties with me. And it was something that I wasn't equipped for, but at the same time, I was far more equipped than many other people around me. And so I found um, comfort in that, I suppose, and really have a soft spot for that part of this profession. I've said it from very early on. I love what we get to do, because I think being vulnerable with another person is about the most raw and real thing that we get to experience with another human being. And the fact that people would have the courage to sit across from me and be vulnerable and be raw and be real is, I mean, it's just one of the most rewarding feelings in the world to me. And it weighs and it's heavy and it's not fun. And I would say it's rarely enjoyable. But even in that same breath, it is, have a lot of appreciation for the courage that people show when they get to the point where they're okay letting someone else walk in their shoes with them.
Wow, that's amazing that you are able to like turn that into something to help people and to help people like walk through life with, even at a young age. I mean, you know, it I really like what you talked about in regards to like vulnerability. because like I vulnerability is probably one of the greatest gifts that like we can receive and give to another person if they are able to like take that. But also, one of the hardest things we can do as individuals, because if we're totally vulnerable, then we're either going to be helped or we're going to be hurt. And, I think that for you to like be in that position where you're like, oh no, it's okay. Like I got you. I'm here for you. And they're like scared and worried and they think their life is falling apart because it very well might be falling apart. And you just like you guide them is like so incredible. But it is kind of like tragic that it had to come from a loss, right? But I feel
Hmm.
like that does, I don't know, we've all experienced some sort of tragedy, the three of us here. And
Hmm.
to like have that like bonded experience is also something that we know that we're not alone in that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we get to work with just some of the best people in the world. From our clients, absolutely. But from the professional relationships that I've gotten to build over the last, 9 years or so has really, it's one of the things that I cherish most. Again, I love the work I get to do with my clients, but it's the relationships I've built with other professionals. Um, not even necessarily because of their stories or their why, but really just seeing their heart revealed, right? The heart that they have for humankind. To help people believe that on your absolute worst day, you are still worth so much and you're so valued and you're so cared for. And, this world is a better place with you in it, and having the capacity to go home and not allow that to ruin the rest of their day or ruin their marriages or spill over onto their kids. And just we work with some very, very incredible people. Yeah, I love it. I could brag on our people all day long.
I think Kristen and I would agree. And something that I appreciate that you emphasized is how heavy this work is. Kristen and I were just talking a few days ago about how, and in our last episode, really about how burnt out we are, but how easily it is to be burnt out when you're in any helping profession. So,
Hmm.
guess I'm just curious to hear more about how do you compartmentalize? How do you leave work at work? What do you do to take care of yourself? And on those really, really tough days, like what do you do in real time? Like maybe while you're in the office to just kind of reset and regroup.
Yeah, I've said this to my clients for years. I feel like the golden rule of therapy is know thyself, right? And so I do a lot of just self-awareness work, with my clients. And a lot of that comes through the self-awareness work that I did within myself, before I was a therapist, but that has carried on, into me in my practice, as well as I feel like I'm deeply and keenly aware of my triggers, of the things that are going to weigh heavier on me. Um, and so there's a couple of different ways I guess I could take that question. I think it's probably the best place for me to take it is a little sidebar. I'm married to a therapist. So me and my wife met each other, in grad school. We're both marriage and family therapists. And so it adds a fun dynamic being married to a therapist, but we really have some strong boundaries set up that are very supportive of each other because we know the weight that each other's carrying. And so for me, an easy answer is like my support system is huge, but my support system gets it far more than 99% of everyone else's support system. Because when I walk out of a bad session, my wife walks out of a bad session, we can look at each other and get it in a completely different way. Um, so, but I guess for me personally, outside of my relationship with my wife and how much she supports me in that, it's really just knowing like what are the things that feed my soul. I say there was a shift probably about 6 years ago for me where I stopped preaching self care and I started preaching soul care. Kind of the idea that there's a lot of things that we do that help ourselves. Um, but how so? A lot of the things that when you ask people what are your coping skills, what are the things that you do for you? Um, not It's a general statement, so I apologize, but a lot of it comes back to I kind of numb out. I do things that help me check out. Um, I binge Netflix. I play video games. I, listen to music, but I don't connect to the music. I just listen to the music and I get lost in it. And all those things are very good and they have their place, certainly. But my question would be like, are those things feeding your soul? Are they giving you energy? Right? Because what we do sucks the energy out of us a lot of times. And so for me, it's knowing when I need self care and when I need soul care, and not shortchanging myself when I need soul care. Going to take a weekend and go camping and get somewhere where my phone doesn't work and somewhere where I can reconnect just with the earth, and with myself, and you know the primitive parts of me being a man and building fire. Uh, you know, sleeping on the ground, listening to the animals at night, outside my tent. For me, like that's what I do for me. That's my soul care. That's I can get 3 hours of sleep, in crappy weather outside, and wake up and feel so much more refreshed than staying at home, sleeping 10 hours in my bed and waking up to, the same life and the mundane tasks from day to day. And so for me, it's been really helpful just to have that really keen awareness of myself. Um, I think I would be doing very well if I didn't have the support system I have in place, but the support system I have in place only amplifies, um, just the self work that I've done to help me with that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that you value highly that support system and like the role that it plays in your life. And I think like what I see with adolescents a lot of the time is that their support system changes constantly.
Hmm.
And like it'll be from like their ninth grade year, they come in and everybody's changing constantly. And by their 12th grade year, their friends are completely different.
Hmm.
And I think that can potentially like cause them to feel some distrust in their friends and some distrust in potentially their family if they were like born into that. How would you, if you were to give any type of advice to like an adolescent or any type of suggestion to an adolescent in starting a support group or like just having like one person, what does it look like to identify that person?
Yeah, that's a that's a great question, right? I think a lot of us find our people through common experiences. Um, Again, to take it back to my childhood, I had a who ended up being my best friend all through middle and high school, who lost his brother, 2 years before I lost my dad. So he lost his brother in a car accident. I lost my dad in a car accident. Um, Other than that, like we're very different people. It's a small town, but I was a city boy by our small town standard. He was, he lived out on the farm. And so our interests were completely different, but we had this very deep rooted connection from a young age through obviously tragedy, but through a shared experience. Um, I think if I were to give any advice, I guess, to a kid, it would be to take some time and evaluate your values. What are the things that you identify in your life that are most important? And once you feel like you have those defined, my challenge would be don't be afraid to ask hard questions, because a lot of kids they're hard. They're challenged with asking hard questions. And you're not going to be able to identify those shared values a lot of times without asking those hard questions. You know what I mean? Like if I really value vulnerability, I'm not going to see that in anybody unless they're an oversharer. And a lot of kids can tend to be that, but even that oversharing can very easily be a mask for something else. And so um, it would really be, and it depends on how old they are. Obviously, I'm not going to ask a 10-year-old to, hey, evaluate yourself and then ask hard questions. So it depends on how old they are, kind of where they're at in their journey. But I think that a safe place to start is, again, like doing a self evaluation. What's most important to you? Um, because kids are attracted to kids who are athletic, or they play the guitar better than I do, or they're this great artistic painter, and I want to be more like them, and they're drawn to the things that they want to be more like. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be this connection that's going to withstand any type of hardship, right? Because It's kind of, gosh, it's not the right word. You're going to have to help me with it. It's kind of lustful in a sense. Like I see something, and I want more of that. So I'm going to attach myself to this person if they'll let me. Um, but at the end of the day, there's no real connection to who you are as a person, at your core. And so, identifying that and then not being afraid to ask questions that help reveal that in other people. Um, and in my experience, being on the receiving end of those hard questions is it's very validating, to be on the receiving end of that. It's very honoring to be on the receiving end of those questions. And so those hard questions really aren't as hard as we say they are. And it's nice to be on the receiving end of them as well.
I would assume it's very esteem building too. To take that
Hmm.
risk and be like, I'm going to ask this hard question, like whatever that might be, right? And then to be like, hey, like, do you value friendship? Like, what does that look like for you? You want to hang out a couple times a week? Oh, I think I can do that. And then like to like
Hmm.
have it turn into something where it's like, oh, we're getting together on Saturday for coffee. Like it's funny because like I have a new friend in my life, and like I've like taken those risks of messaging them and being like, "Hey, like let's go out on Saturday. Let's get together."
Hmm.
And like they're like, "Okay, let's do it." And I'm like, "Oh, wow. Okay." Cuz it's funny, like even as an adult, my brain will tell me this person doesn't even want to hang out with me anyway. This person isn't interested in what I have to say, so I'm not going to speak up. And it's like those internal messages that were passed down to me from like my mother,
Hmm.
right? That like end up turning me into something that I don't want to be.
Yeah, it's cool when you get to see where vulnerability and autonomy kind of converge. It's a beautiful intersection. Um, and it's so much, it's right on the other step of our fear most of the time.
I don't know. I know Kristen has agreed in the past. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts, but I guess my first one is like, I find it helpful to do like a values sort with kids when I'm meeting them for the first time during an intake, and they're always so shocked. Like, what are you using this for, Kelly? Like, why do I have to do this? But then they get into the game because we've gamified it, and they're like, wow, like, I didn't even realize that was so important to me. So, that aside, I guess I'm also just curious to hear like, are you seeing any trends or really like common threads in the youth that you work with? I know Kristen and I talk a lot about when we go into schools that resiliency is like a huge topic, that admin and guidance counselors and teachers or whomever invited us to a school to speak is like, please touch on resiliency or indirectly, please talk about it. So I always love to ask other helping professionals like what is the culture like in your area around youth mental health, and like what are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah, so a lot of the work that I do is based out of a grief lens. Makes sense, right? And so I feel like you kind of see what you want to see depending on the lens that you choose to look at life or at people through. And I've felt for a couple of years, and I feel strongerly I feel stronger now than ever that I think grief is going to be kind of the next. We've had this huge rush of trauma work over the past, I don't know, maybe 5 years. I know it's been longer than that, but it feels like the last 5 years, trauma has been at the forefront of everything. Comes back to a trauma. Everything that you're dealing with, there's some trauma associated with it. Um, and because of that, we've had some incredible awareness that's been brought out. EMDR has everyone wants to be EMDR to the point now where people are like, I don't want to be EMDR because everyone's EMDR certified. But it's great work, and the result, the efficacy of the work that's being done is tremendous. I feel like grief is going to be that next wave, um, because so much of a lot of it comes with the education, right? Like people when the layperson thinks of grief, they think of loss, death, right? I mean, grief is just so much more than that. And I think as education furthers on people understanding, like grief is is not just like loss of a person, it's loss of expectation. It's, having a dream when you were 6 years old, you had this dream for your life, and it hasn't turned out that way. And maybe it's better. It's probably better in a lot of ways than you dreamed it would be. And in some areas it's worse than you dreamed it would be. And there's a grieving process that needs to take place. It doesn't have to be this long, drawn out grieving process, but it's just identifying the fact that, what, things didn't turn out the way that I thought they would, or what, I didn't have the mom that I thought I was going to have. I always wanted my mom to be more than she was, or right, easily for me, it was not just grieving the fact that my dad died, it's grieving the fact that, like, I had to teach myself how to shave. A YouTube video taught me how to tie a necktie. Little things that, you know, I didn't know that I wanted from my dad until I didn't have that experience. And I was like, shoot, like what a cool thing to have been able to do. Like I got to, and now I'm married and I have kids, and so it just gets deeper, right? Like my dad, my wife, she knows my dad through me, which is very honoring, and it's one of the beauties of grief work, just in general, is like if you do lose someone, the kind of reconceptualization that they're not dead and gone, like they physically are not here, but so much of who they are lives on through the people who knew them the most. Um, my grandkid or my grandkids, my kids think that my stepdad is my dad, and they're not old enough yet to have that conversation about my dad. But it's like little moments, kind of micro griefs that add up over time, and you have no idea that they're adding up until all of a sudden you're like, man, something feels heavy, and I don't know what it is. And you think about it, and you're like, well, nothing big happened, you know. My parents didn't get divorced, or I didn't go through a breakup with my girlfriend, or so like why is this weight here? And so I've just found myself in a lot of the work that I'm doing is helping the adolescents that I'm working with just understand that sometimes weight is weight. So it's just life. Um, and if you want to be able to point to it and say, hey, this is what it was, a lot of times we can pull it back to some just small unmet need, unmet expectation. Things went differently than I thought. And for some reason, it's weighing on me more than I would have anticipated. But the fact is, it is. And so let's process those micro griefs, and give you back some of your thought life, right? Because that's usually where it weighs the most on us. That was a long roundabout answer, and so I apologize, Kelly.
No,
Um,
like this
That was
is
incredible.
so like Kelly and I are like low key messaging each other like I might cry because it's like so real. So real. I mean, like people think like, oh, it's been so many years since I lost X, Y, and Z. It shouldn't bother me anymore. And I always like the way that I like to say it is that grief doesn't go away, it just changes shapes over time. And sometimes it's
mhm,
like bigger parts of us, sometimes it's smaller parts of us. And like, the tying the tie, like that was me with like braiding my hair and doing my nails. Like I grew up with like my mom passed when I was young. And I remember like vivid memory of being in the movie theater sobbing because there was a girl that had her hair braided and I couldn't braid my hair and she was sitting with her mom and my dad was so confused. He was like, "Why
yeah.
are you this upset?" And I couldn't understand it at the time, but looking back I'm like, "Oh, like because I felt that grief. I felt that sense of absence where like I didn't have that and I didn't know how to deal with it." Which is
Hmm.
why the fact that you work with adolescents makes me feel so much happier because it's like holy crap, like because I don't know about where you are, but where we are, uh adolescent treatment care is very slim, very
Hmm.
slim.
Yeah, I don't know the national statistics, but I mean, I would venture to say it's probably that way across the country. Um, just there's one because kids are kids need help. Kids care. I won't say they need help, but they need care, um, at such a rate that we're just not able to provide. It's easier for parents to look at a kid, or for a teacher to look at a kid, or for anyone in authority to look at a kid and say, that kid is struggling. Let's pull whatever strings we need to get them into care, than it is for adults to be like self-identify, right? Or my wife comes in and is like, hey, I really think that you need to go see a therapist. I'm like, all right, you want to really talk about it? Right. Because I take offense to it because I can't receive it. kids are in such a position that we can kind of position them wherever we feel like they need success. And so many kids are being referred for help, and there's just not enough people to be able to provide that care. And I mean, even myself, like I can do kind of middle to late adolescence, but if you give me, an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old, like that's just not my skill set. The type of therapy, the way that I connect with these kids is so different. And so um, I feel like every 3 years or so for an adolescent time frame is like I could see an 18-year-old, I could see a 67-year-old, and my therapy is going to look different, but it's going to look very similar, right? But seeing a 6 to 9-year-old and a 9 to 12-year-old is like an entire lifespan. And it takes a special type of person to do what we do in general, but especially to get in there with kids and deal with the challenges that these kids are facing that we sure as heck didn't face when we were kids. Um, and of course, just the traumas that are often associated with working with kids. It's a completely different ball game. So people who do it and do it full time and do it well, man, they're the real MVPs. It's incredible.
I would have to agree. I think, if anything, I think that the pandemic, or at least the last like 4 years in our society, in our world, have amplified that there's always been a youth mental health crisis. I feel like
Hmm.
in our field, we all know that we're in this, we're immersed in this. And then I talk to like distant family members or colleagues in different jobs, and they're like, wow, like the dots are connecting. This is a problem. I'm like, it's always been a problem. We're just all kind of like tuning into the same TV channel now.
Hmm.
And there's more funding and resources from a federal level. Especially, at least I can speak for New York State. It's one of the governor's top political priorities is to fund satellite school-based mental health clinics, especially in rural areas where I live. But all of that being said, I don't know if you both would agree. Like, do you feel like I get burnt out and I start to question like my therapeutic approach and skill set when I hear others start to say, like, oh, this has always been an issue? Like, wow, I thought this was like a new health trend that there's a youth mental health crisis. And then I start to spiral and I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this has always been going on. Children of all ages and backgrounds have always been struggling, but it can be really defeating sometimes to be in professional spaces. Especially, I work in a public school, and the school system, when the administrators kind of catch up and finally tune in and are like, oh, this is a problem, and the social workers and therapists are sitting there like, this has always been an issue. But all of that being said, I don't know if both of you would agree, but it can be really defeating to always kind of have your advocacy hat on 24 hours a day in these professional settings.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's kind of different types of burnout, right? Like there's the burnout where you're just working yourself into the ground. You don't even have time to breathe or take care of yourself. And then there's a different level of burnout, which I think is far more dangerous, and we have to be careful as therapists to not let it turn into apathy, because you can feel like you're on an island. And I think that's the most dangerous type of burnout. To your point, Kelly, where you're like you're looking around and there's no food or resources and you're living it because you're on the island, and you look across the bridge and there's this fruitful, bountiful people doing just living in their own lives, not even looking out at your island. And then when they look out at your island, they're like, oh man, this has that island always been there, and you're over here like picking grains of sand out of your teeth. Like, yes, you know what, to you and to you. And it's I think that's the kind of the burnout that can be very dangerous for us, because I think that's when we can become apathetic towards people. And I think that our ability to remain empathetic over long periods of time is what makes what we do invaluable, right? That's why AI will never have our jobs. Not to take that off of on a political space too, but our ability to be empathetic, our ability to connect with other people, um, is really our greatest tool. right? I mean, there's been research come back that it doesn't matter if you're the best therapist in the world, if you can't connect with somebody, the work that you do is going to be pointless. You're not going to take any ground. And so our ability to connect with other people and believe in people and have hope for people, um, is something that makes us stand out, right? And then on the flip side of that, when other people are just negligent to what's going on, and the fact that kids are not struggling for the first time, like they've been struggling for decades. Kids have been struggling for centuries. This isn't new. um, it can be very hard to remain in tune with yourself and attached to your mission and your focus when you just want to be like, all right, whatever, no one cares, I'm doing this all by myself, it's not worth it.
I feel like sometimes having we've all been there. We have to have. I mean, there have been times where, like yesterday, I was like crying in my office. Like, you know what? It's the end of the school year. Like, kids are wilding. And I just did a group, didn't go well, and like went into my office, had a moment, and then I texted my friend who's in the field, and I wish I knew her title. I don't know her title. I know that she just got her master's. She's amazing. And I texted her and I was like, I am, I can't do this. Like, I can't do this. And she called me immediately and was just like, hey, like, it's so like we did some problem solving, but we also like she was like, me too, girl, we've been there. Everybody's been there at some point in their life where
Mhm.
they're just like, I don't know if I am right for this job. And then there are other moments where you make such a wonderful connection with a client or with a person, and it makes it all feel worth it, and you're like,
Mhm.
wow, like that was so cool, like, and they leave and you feel so good and they feel good, and it's it is very much wave after wave after wave. I find I am not a therapist, that's not my role, but I work in a school part-time, and I do like sort of like liaison services. So
Mhm.
I do assessments in small groups and a lot of it nicotine and cannabis related. But if they're like, hey, I need help, or hey, like I need support, I can connect them, which is great. But and I'll connect them to people like you or people like Kel. But it's tough, man.
Yeah, it is. That's fun work though. Getting to connect people. It's part of what I enjoy most about my role. So I'm the marriage and family therapist, but I'm also the director of business development. So I'm helping our company kind of grow and scale. And a large part of that is me being in the community, meeting other therapists, meeting with our mental health authorities, helping people get connected to resources, whether that's with us or whether that's with the practice down the road. My hope is that when someone needs help, when someone needs to find care, their first thought is, "Let me call Josh," because he is able to push people where they need to be, so that they can receive care and not just hop on Psychology Today. There's nothing wrong with that because Psychology Today is a great resource, but you hop on Psychology Today, you're getting connected with someone that you've never met, that you really haven't vetted or had the opportunity to. And Kristen, that's one of the things that you get to do is someone comes and says, hey, can you help me with this? You're like, yes, I've got three people who are coming to mind right now. Right. And you do your checkbox. Well, do you need insurance? Is it private paid? Virtual, in person, male, female, what population, whatever. But at the end of that, you've got this internal Rolodex where you're like, I have relationships with this person, this person, this person. I think they'd all be great fits, but let me try and get you connected with this person. And then they get in, and then that therapist reaches back out. I was like, hey, Kristen, thanks for the referral. This is awesome. And you're like, yes. It's a different level of fulfillment, right? And it's being a connector, being an advocate for people, but also being a connector of people is one of the cool back ends of this job that I think doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun because like as somebody is telling me about what's going on, I'm already like acting as a filter. I'm like, okay, so you don't want this person, but you might want this
Hmm.
person, and by the time we meet for our 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, like this is what I'm gonna do. This is how I'm gonna hook you up. And I'll meet with you in a couple days and we'll see where we're at. And it's just
Hmm.
it's a really cool position to be in. Um, what's tough is like, as you said, like being in adolescent care, parents or caregivers have to be on board. Uh, at least that's how it is here. They
Hmm.
have to sign off, and because they're the ones that's paying the bill. So talking with parents can also be challenging at times, but also, it's part of the territory.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's those conversations. I've come to really appreciate those conversations with parents. Um, and again, my just my empathy for parents, for people has just grown deeper and deeper, because at the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know. And the same people who are thinking that mental health is just now a crisis for the first time are the same people who are coming to that realization because their kids are struggling and they've never considered, it's always that not my kid mentality. This would never happen to me. And now they find themselves in unfamiliar territory, and they're terrified, because suicide is everywhere you look, right? Drug abuse is everywhere you look. I wouldn't say that's inherently different from 10 or 15 years ago, but our phones have made it so much more accessible, right? It's you never heard about it unless it was a celebrity and it made the news or the newspaper. But now you get a tweet and you know it's seen in 15 seconds and it's seen by 150,000 people an hour. So just the information travels so much faster now, and so I think parents are a little bit more aware of how scary this world is as it relates to their kids. And then they find out that their kid's struggling and they're terrified. And so I've come to enjoy those conversations with parents because I get to be an educator, and I get to kind of be a calming, um, a calming voice into that situation to say, hey, this is this is not uncommon. It's uncommon for you. That's why it feels this way. This is not uncommon. Your kid is not the first person to struggle with this. This is not forever, right? Just because he punched a kid in the face, you know, at school doesn't mean he's going to become some deviant and he's on his way towards juvie or jail. Like, there's processes, there's people, there's ways to work around this. And I think parents a lot of times just they need that calming voice to not just say everything's going to be okay, but to help them see the landscape around them, right? Because when our flight flight or freeze response kicks in, we get very narrow vision, right? And when we're only looking right here, we miss everything that's going on over here. And so that's our ability to just step back in and say, okay, I'm gonna step you back just a little bit so you can still see what's going on right here, but you can also see how all of this um, has been created and it's highly successful to help you in this situation. um, Part of that's the salesman in me, I guess. Um, but that's I mean we're all salesmen, right? We're constantly selling people on themselves. We're selling them on the idea of hope. We're selling them on the idea of resilience, right? And so I don't want salesmen to get dragged through the mud in that because it is a large part of what we do. But you're right; those conversations are not they're not fun, and it feels like they're just becoming more and more and more frequent. But I would challenge anyone to kind of try and shift their focus on those conversations because they're so valuable. Um, and some people are naive by choice, and some people are naive by circumstance. And you don't know what you don't know until you know, and then you know, and then you can't unknow, and that's the danger of knowing. Sorry about that.
Gosh, no, I love that. I think often, at least working with young adults, like they often frame their caregivers as like the enemy, or don't tell my mom, my dad, grandma, grandpa, whomever that I just told you that. And that's a legal and ethical conversation for another day. But I often try to grow, my empathy for them more by just imagining the caregiver as the adolescent, like just really
Mm-hmm.
thinking to myself, like, I wonder what they were like at this age. I wonder what they've been through, and really just trying to make that shift by, as funny as it sounds, maybe we're sitting in an office and just imagining, like, Oh, well, she mentioned she went to high school here too. I wonder what her experience was like with her social worker. Oh, wait, they didn't have a
Hmm.
social worker when she was here, in 1985. So just like simple things like that to try to, grow that empathy, but also like make them know, the caregivers know, the parents know, like we're here for your child, but we're also here for you. I
Yeah.
might be treating your child, but I'm not only here to educate you, but I'm here just for you. Do you have something going on that you want to talk
Hmm.
about? And I feel like that's often lost when we're trying to balance like I'm on paper treating the child, but of course the parents are thrown in there too, and it's just like a whole juggling act. And by
Hmm.
no means am I good at it. I am 1 year into this and still figuring out what's best for those conversations. But yeah, just wanted to shift a little bit and just give you some time to talk about the work that mind body optimization is doing and what you guys are working on in your first year here.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for that space. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's really cool work. So really our focus is to provide care as quickly and as effectively as possible, right? So I don't know how it is, where you guys are right now to in Texas, at least in the Metroplex, to see a psychiatrist, you're looking at about a 4 to 6 week wait. I think that from what I've seen lately, there's a national shortage of psychiatrists, and unfortunately, that number is just getting lower and lower. So it's a good thing that nurse practitioners and advanced practice providers are able to offer psychiatric care as well. But the fact remains there's a shortage of psychiatrists, and so our what we're working on doing is creating a staffing model, and it's a heavy staffing model, but that allows us to not have to put someone on a wait list. And so if someone calls in and needs to see a psychiatrist, we're going to have someone within our system that's able to see them today or tomorrow, within 24 hours, right? Because we know if we schedule them out 3 weeks, not only is that 3 weeks of potential deterioration, that's 3 weeks where cold feet can become very, very common, right? And so we get to that third week, we finally have this patient scheduled to come in, and they ghost us, right? Because the the opportunity or the initial desire, that flash of courage to ask for help has kind of is waned a little bit. And so it's so important to be able to treat people and help people get the care that they need when they ask for it and not be put on a wait list. So being able to see people next day is really important to us. We're focusing a lot of efforts on that, and then the fact that we have therapy and psychiatry in house together is a big part of what we're trying to accomplish. Right, as a therapist, when I was in private practice before I was here, I would see people who needed to be on medication management, who needed to take Lexapro or whatever, and I'm having to refer them a county over because there's no providers where I live. And so now we're adding this huge burden. It's huge, not maybe not huge to me. Just go drive around. I do a lot of driving around anyways, but to someone who is really in it, fighting for themselves and fighting to regain some of their mental capacity, having them drive 15 minutes to see me and then 35 minutes to go see another provider might be the thing that makes them go, no, I can't do this. To which they discontinue one of those forms of treatment, or in likelihood, they discontinue both forms of treatment. And so, rather than referring across the county, our system is built up so we can refer across the hallway. So we have this really strong collaborative care model between our therapists and our psychiatry providers, to where when they share a patient, right, they're able to discuss progress. They're able to get more than just patient feedback, right? A patient sits across from me and it's like, hey, how's your therapy going? Oh, it's going well. We talk about things. I'm learning how to, I'm learning about deep breathing, whatever it might be. Our clients aren't always the best historians, especially kiddos, right? You guys know that very well. You ask a kiddo what they did last night, and they're like, crickets. And so, um, that being a part of our collaborative care model is a really cool feature of what we're doing. And then we're also doing one thing that I I have yet to see it. I'm sure it's out there, but I've yet to see another mental health practice doing, and that is including medical testing. And so, to our patients who are willing, we take a couple of vials of blood, um, and then we do a full blood count test, a metabolic test, and then we do a thyroid and hormone test as well. Those are the three panels that we do. And really, what we're trying to do is rule out any medical complexities that might be disguised as mental health, right? If my testosterone is low, it's going to look very similar in symptomology to depression, right? I'm going to be less interested, less energy, less motivated. Check, 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 right? For major depressive disorder. If we get that patient started on an antidepressant, well, now we've just introduced them to psychotropic medication, and that in and of itself is is a road, filled with, um, what happens when you get started on psychotropic medications, right? What are the pitfalls? What are the side effects that sometimes can bother you? And so rather than treating them for psychotropic medication with psychotropic medication, I'm sorry, if they have low testosterone, we then get to refer them out to a doctor who can treat the core issue, right? Because if we treat them for depression, that Lexapro is not going to do anything. It's not going to help with any of that depressive symptomology because that's not the issue. And so we're doing some medical testing to kind of just help us steer our patients in the right direction. If you don't need to be on psychotropic meds, let's not put you on psychotropic meds. It's not something we're treating, but we'll refer out for. We've seen trends since COVID that at least adult age, humans are not going to their primary care. They're not going to their family doctors as frequently or with the same regularity that they were pre-COVID for whatever reason. And so, what we're doing is no different than you would be receiving if you were just doing your annual checkups. But people aren't, and so we want to be able to help identify um, and refer out appropriately for anything else that might be disguised as mental illness. Because mental illness is tough enough when you're not dealing with any other medical complexities.
So, couple questions. Here's my little filter. So is it just in-person care or is it virtual care as well?
We do provide both in person and virtual. I would say I really push for in person as much as we can. It's right. This is fun. I enjoy doing this with you guys.
Oh, do your earbuds die?
Yeah, no, I scratched my ear and I pressed the
Oh,
button. So
okay. You could just
um,
start that sentence over.
yeah, I really enjoy doing this. I would enjoy this so much more if I got to see the 3D version of you right in front of me. Right.
Right. So you
I
do
see.
both, but you prefer in person.
Yeah, yeah. We're really trying to get people into our clinics if they're able to, and if they're not, then that's fine. That's what virtual care was created for. But it's even just part of like it's still that aftermath of COVID. We're just reconnecting with people is such a valuable thing, and so if we get any say, we try and have them come in person. But virtual care exists for the very reason for people with transportation issues, with people with heightened levels of anxiety that just aren't ready for that yet. And so we will treat people in person and virtually.
And then if somebody were, so what town in Texas?
So we're in South Lake and in Plano, which are both kind of suburban towns within the Dallas Fort Worth area.
Great. So if somebody is in those areas and they're like, man, like this guy's great. I want to book a session with him, or, he seems okay, but I might want somebody else from that practice. What would be the first step?
Yeah. So our website is mindbodyo.com. That's a great resource, obviously, because you can learn a little bit more about our company. You can read through our mission, our vision, our values, which is, I would say, please do, because we want to always make sure that we're doing what we're saying we're doing. But our providers are on there. Each of them have a bio that you can kind of look through and see if this is someone you're interested in. If that's not something that you want to do, we do have a QR code. I wish I could pop one up there for you. Um, that
We'll link
essentially
it. We'll
that
link it for you,
essentially
Josh.
perfect. That'd be great. Thank you. And really, it's just a form that lets you fill out, hey, here's my name, here's my date of birth, here's all my information that you need. Um, and then our team receives that, and then we can get you scheduled with whoever. Because that's one thing, just with the younger generation, doesn't like to be on the phone as much as the older generations do. That there's less value in it. I would rather text you than talk to you on the phone. And so we've created kind of a linkage so that people can, if you don't want to hop on the phone, it's fine. You don't need to hop on the phone. We'll get this information from you. We'll do all the work on the back end, and then we'll call you to say, hey, we've got you scheduled at this time with this person. Is that okay with you? Yes, awesome. Okay, expect the intake paperwork to be coming to your email. Please complete that before your first session. All that good jazz. And then obviously our phone number, right? Everyone can always call our phone number if they need to.
And we'll absolutely link anything and everything, so folks know where to go if they're interested and want to reach out and would prefer not to speak on the phone, because
Mm-hmm.
myself included, sometimes that's easier. But as we wrap up here, Josh, we both just want to thank you so much for joining us, sharing a little bit about what brought you to this work and the work that you're currently doing, and also the amazing work that Mind Body Optimization is doing. And I just want to give you like one last, hurrah, and give you the floor and just ask, where can people keep up with you and keep up with your work?
Yeah. So, like I said, our website is mindbodyo.com. We have a Facebook page as well. So if you just go up to your search engine and type in Mind Body Optimization, we will pop up. We put out a lot of good content weekly. Just it's more educational content, so it's more so for the person who just wants to learn more about mental health. It's not like, hey, if you want to book with us, then awesome, book with us. But if you just want to learn, about, well, what are some ways that anxiety might be affecting me that I don't realize, right? We have a lot of good content that comes out, and so Facebook, Instagram, we're getting ready to launch a YouTube channel. That's not going to be I would say, a lot of educational content, so much of like, hey, here's our spaces. We want you to be more comfortable before you come in, and giving you the ability to see that is going to help you. And so, really just trying to eliminate as many barriers as we can to people getting into care. So, we're pretty easy to find if you just search us. And I just wanted to say thank y'all for what y'all are doing. Um, what a great opportunity to do this on, May 7th, 7 days into Mental Health Awareness Month. Um, that's the heartbeat behind, for me, for what we do, is mental health awareness. There was so much that I wish I knew growing up, and I suffered in silence for so long because I didn't know that it was okay to hop on a podcast. Well, I couldn't have when I was a kid, but to be able to hop on with two strangers and have a conversation about mental health, and to be able to say, hey, my dad died and it sucked, and I saw some things, and to be able to have the person across from me say, you know what, my mom passed too, and growing up wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. um, Mental health awareness is as simple as having a conversation. And so thank y'all so much for taking your time. You're both very busy, you know, with work and school and everything that you guys are doing, and to take time out of your schedules to do exactly that, to open up the floor to conversations and to help people understand that at the end of the day, it's okay to not be okay. It's not okay not to talk about it. It's so invaluable. I wish I had heard it when I was a kid. I don't know if there's any kids listening to this, but it doesn't matter because there's too many adults who didn't hear it when they were kids either, that still need to learn that same truth. So thank you all for just offering this, and for putting this together, and for asking thoughtful questions. And this has been a great experience. And so I look forward to following you guys for quite some time, hopefully.
Thank you so much, Josh. You were
Thank
incredible.
you. Thank you, Josh.
Awesome sauce. That was great. Let me
All
see.
right.